The Short Game is listener-supported on Patreon. If you'd like to support the show and join us on our Discord, head to theshortgame.net or patreon.com/theshortgame. Welcome back to The Short Game. This is a show about short video games, games that respect your time. I'm Reagan Kelly, and I am joined this week by my awesome co-hosts,
Laura Nash.
And your twin brother, Shane Kelly.
Not mine, but Reagan's.
My twin brother and yours.
Laura's twin brother, Shane Kelly.
Everyone's twin, Shane's Kelly.
Yes,
Sequencing.
The internet's twin. Actually, that sounds kind of threatening or unsettling, doesn't it? The internet's twin.
It sounds very Kentucky Route Zero.
It does, yes. This week we are talking about Act 4 of Kentucky Route Zero. So if you listened last week, we were intending to cover Act 4 as part of that massive episode, but we had so much to say about Act 3 that we split this one off. This one will probably be a little shorter than that one, since I don't know if I have quite as much to say about Act 4 as I did about Act 3, but that doesn't mean that it wasn't pretty darn interesting. So we can go ahead and pretty much get right into it with the brief addenda that, like I said last time, we are pretty much in full-on spoiler territory here. So if you, for whatever reason, have skipped into this episode and have not played Act 4 of Kentucky Route Zero, prepare for full-on spoilers about that act. We're just going to be getting into it and talking about individual plot beats and details.
If this is your first episode of The Short Game, no. Just no. Turn back.
That you're doing something horribly wrong.
Scroll back like 3 or 4 and pick one of those.
Yeah. And we're sorry, but thank you for listening.
Come back another day.
Indeed. So Act 4, let's refresh our memories about where we left off at the end of Act 3. You know, Act 3 we had just left the distillery, and some really unsettling things had taken place there, but their consequences were not fully realized yet at the time. So Conway, our sort of player avatar, essentially, in the game, has just signed his soul away, in a sense. He's now under contract to the distillery, to Hard Times Liquor. And he doesn't seem all that bothered by it, but it's clear that sort of something about this contract is going to come due. It's now clear that he's going to have to start working for them tomorrow. That's the idea.
And did we, at the very end of the last episode, have the final image of the Mucky Mammoth? Was that discussed, or did we kind of sweep that aside?
Yeah,
Very briefly.
Well, that is our final image, so go ahead and describe the Mucky Mammoth for us.
As our kind of discussion of the indentured servitude that Conway has kind of entered into is wrapping up, they're all together waiting for the ferry, which slowly rolls up, and in true magical realist style, the ferry is a very strange-looking boat. Imagine a normal-looking ferry, but sitting on the prow of the ship is kind of cross-legged, not really seeming to fit, is a gigantic woolly mammoth.
Yeah.
End. Yeah, that was it. And I did not know at the time, at the end of that act, but at the start of Act 4, it's pretty much immediately revealed that mammoth is not another passenger on the ship. It is, in fact, the ship, or a part of the ship. The Mucky Mammoth is the name of the ferry, and the ferry has, as a part of its construction, a large mechanical mammoth. And it's pretty clear right away that the mechanical mammoth is integral to the operation of the ship, because the boat seems to kind of break down, and in the very first scene, we see new character Will, one of the captains or mechanics of the Mucky Mammoth, working on. He has a panel open in the side of the mammoth, and he's gotten to work trying to repair it, which is a surprising image.
Yeah, so the ship is super weird looking, and actually, I don't know. Is it like, that's the thing about magical realism? Like it's odd that this ship has a giant mechanical mammoth on it, but like it's not like it's very normal weird in the same way that everything is in Kentucky Route Zero.
There was probably a huge delay before this chapter was released, and seeing the Mucky Mammoth in silhouette at the end of chapter 3 felt like a promise that the next episode's going to come out, and it also felt very much like when Julie and the giant bird showed up, like a silhouetted thing that's going to happen soon. And I loved that, it also felt like the horse from Equus Oils. It felt like this really cool image that was going to take you forward, like maybe get reused. And I don't know, like there's something about, I always think of like bowsprits, the women.
Oh yes,
the
yes,
things
yes.
that
I know
stick
what you're
out on the
talking
front
about.
of boats that often have like women on it or something. Like this on a ferry felt very much like one of those. But I love.
But it takes up like half of the boat.
and it's got like, it's sitting, like it's got cross-legged. It's not like a formidable mammoth.
It looks like it's just had to squish down a little bit to fit. It doesn't have enough room. And also, I think Shane mentioned that it was on the front, but I actually think it's. I mean, maybe I'm misreading the profile of the boat, but I think it's sitting in the back. Like this is the kind of ferry that you could see carrying cars or something like that. But the whole area that would be basically the back deck is taken up by this massive mammoth. Something about that I think is kind of the mammoth being mechanical is I think it's a bit of a it was a bit of a misdirect. Like there's no indication at the end of Act 3 that the mammoth isn't alive, and then it's sort of like, haha, you waited 2 years and turns out the mammoth is a robot, is almost a little bit of like a slightly funny misdirect.
I think it's also kind of funny that like those people who were kind of waiting around for this next act for a very long time were left with the question, what's going on with this mammoth? And as we begin, our main character on the boat, or I guess our introductory character to the boat, Will, is literally sitting there, book in hand, trying to answer the question, hey, what's going on with this mammoth?
That's true. I mean, I wonder if you guys have any interpretation of the mammoth. It's one of the most interesting visuals of the act, and it sticks with us through the entire act. But I don't know, like, not that everything in this necessarily is like this means X or Y, but like, what is a broken mammoth to you guys?
It is something extinct that has come back to life and then not. I feel like it's kind of this, like, I don't know, it being a mammoth feels like something that is supposed to be dead, and it's not.
Yeah,
but it's
not
kind
entirely.
of broken.
Yeah.
I think if I can kind of put a theme to a lot of this this act, it has to do with memory and the past. And I think the mammoth being like something, it's literally an elephant in the room, and it's literally an extinct thing from the past. Mm-hmm. So I think maybe there's something there.
That's true. I think this episode, more than the last one, is about like looking back on. I mean, it still carries through some of the themes from the previous episode. Themes like debt are still pretty foreground, but it's much more looking back at the ways that has always been with us, looking back into the past of these characters and the past of this place. So yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Like this episode, even though we're kind of approaching the end, it's sort of like reaching back into the past to kind of draw that through line.
Yeah. That's the one thing that for me came up over and over again in this act is memory and forgetting, and can you forget something intentionally? What is the cause of forgetting? So
when do memories crop up? Yeah, it keeps coming back and back. And I think there's a bit of nostalgia, but it's not sweet. It's that like pain of the old wound, Mad Men style nostalgia where it kind of sticks a bit.
Yeah, so there's a couple of things we should talk about at the top. This is a different structure than any of the previous acts. So unlike the other acts, this one takes the form of sort of a journey. It feels like things are really starting to propel forward and that we're really moving towards whatever the ultimate conclusion is going to be for these characters. In a very physical way, we are on the path. We're traveling down the Echo. The Echo is a submerged underground river through the caverns of Kentucky. So not only is there a underground highway, we're off the highway. We're now on the underground river, the Echo. And it's a bit of a travel story in an interesting way, and it's also branching much more significantly, many more like optional, missable, scenes than we've seen in most of the previous game. So about that first part, about it being a travel story, something that struck me about this was that it's kind of impossible to look back and say exactly what something's references or inspirations were. But I think it's sort of interesting that this chapter came out about 2 years after the release of 80 Days. 80 Days came out around the time when when Act 3 came out. And something about I really see a little bit of an influence there, even though it's not the same kind of thing exactly. I think it definitely has some of the same feeling of like travel from place to place and having these sort of little moments that crop up while you're on the road as text, and interspersed with more fully realized scenes that happen when you reach various destinations along your path. It felt a little bit 80 Days to me, and I really kind of liked that about it, although it definitely also meant that there was a lot more material in this that, just like with 80 Days, you could play that dozens of times and not see all of the material. Here, at least I think 4 points in the act, there are options to choose between 2 different scenes to see, basically. So I think all 3 of us are going to have seen different material in this.
Absolutely. This felt like the most branching part of the narrative, and in the most explicitly branching. It reminded me a little bit of the Night in the Woods forking, where you choose which friend you want to go hang out with, and you're consciously missing it. This is one of the first times when whole scenes, like a lot of I wouldn't say a complaint, but earlier episodes we talked about, you might not realize you opted out of a character, a scene, an entire moment because you just bypassed it. This one, you knew what you were missing each time.
That's true. Or more or less, you knew that you were missing something, that you had 2 choices to make, and each of them would be a different scene that you'd see play out.
Correct.
Mostly your choices between getting off the boat and staying on the boat.
Speaking of getting on the boat and staying on the boat, did you guys play Here Along the Echo? The little interlude before this?
Yes. So Here and There Along the Echo, the interlude that came between Acts 3 and 4.
Do you know the crazy, weird story behind this?
I guess not.
Oh, okay. So Here and There Among the Echo is a game where you just call a phone number and play with the buttons.
It's like a phone tree, basically, yeah.
Right, where it's the tourism hotline and they tell you things about all the places you're going to stop and see, and maybe some things you won't. But what they did in real life is they put on eBay a phone called the Weird Telephone. And they said, I learned about this at the Victoria and Albert exhibition. I'll stop name dropping it, but it's helpful.
It's relevant.
It's relevant. So the phone gets sold on eBay, and they say that it's a collector that collects telephones in Kentucky that sold her collection after her husband's death. And the phone only would dial one number, and it would play Here and There Along the Echo.
Huh.
And so they basically programmed a telephone to just play this game on it. And they had it in the museum, and you could dial, they sent a postcard with it that said Here and There Along the Echo, a guide to the Echo River, and had the phone number on it. So you could call this, like if you didn't have the weird phone, you could then call the number. But the weird thing about the weird phone is it also would ring and give you a weird message at the end, which is what happens if you sit there for a couple of minutes. Apparently at the end of the interlude, it'll call you and play the message that would happen on the weird phone if you left it alone. It's just bizarre that they made of all the things they had to do
a physical thing
to get this game going, they just took a detour and made a phone.
Yeah, that's
that
pretty wild.
They sold on eBay for who knows. it's just a very interesting, weird thing that they did.
I really actually enjoyed this particular interlude. I will say maybe not the strongest of the interludes. I think hardly anything holds up to the entertainment, which I thought was absolutely stellar. But here and there along the Echo, was neat to play this before playing the game because first of all, it adds some additional weight to a lot of the scenes that you come across. For example, you can listen in to the telephone hotline explaining to you the significance of the Iron Pariah, the essentially like derelict Civil War steamship randomly circling the Echo, home to a huge colony of cats, right? But in the game, you pretty much just see that drift past you at one point, and I wouldn't have had the context for it. Not that necessarily the context really helps you make actual sense of it. It's still pretty surreal, but having listened to that in advance made me more excited about that moment in the game.
I mostly used it to get advice on what to do if you're holding a snake.
Yes, that was the best part. Oh my God.
Just choose that option, players, if you haven't done it. Just hold that snake and tell Delilah whisper some sweet things into Delilah's.
Oh my goodness. I really, really, really enjoyed that. So
I continue to kind of mostly skip these interludes, but this one I did play around with, but I did not choose the snake option. Sorry, what is this wonderful snake option?
So you can, it's like, do you want to hear about historical things? And it's like, press 4 if you're holding a snake. And then it asks you like what the snake is doing, and then like
it's actually probably it's one of the deeper parts of this in terms of just the amount of choices that it gives you and the layers. There's a lot of detail to its instructions about holding the snake. So if you're holding a snake right now, press 7 or whatever, and you do that, and it asks you things like, if you don't remember picking up the snake, press 1. If you're holding it for religious reasons, press 2. That sort of thing. And then you get a really extended walkthrough, very calm-voiced walkthrough of how to handle holding this snake, including many branching options about what the snake is doing, or I think if you want to name the snake, that sort of thing.
If the snake is fallen asleep, how can you gently wake it up so that it feels good about itself? So many options.
Yes.
Like what part of your body are you holding the snake? Is it in your hand? Is it wrapped around your forearm?
That's tremendous.
It goes on for quite a while. And I very much I think I was supposed to be like looking up the tour guide options, but I played the snake and was like, I think I'm good.
Yeah. So I recommend this act. I will say that there's a lot of spoken word material in this, and I did my sort of standard way of doing these sorts of things was I very methodically went through every single phone option that I could. And I don't necessarily feel like that was a truly good use of my time. Some of the stuff was a little bit either repetitive or kind of covered in the act that was to follow it. But it's still definitely worth going through it at the very least because of the snake stuff. So recommend that. And once you get into the actual meat of the episode, most of the points of interest that are described by the telephone line are part of the act. You see almost all of them, so that's definitely interesting.
So it was a good and comprehensive guide.
It was indeed a very good and comprehensive guide. So obviously, we start on the boat, and I think Junebug and Will have a conversation. And they're hanging out on the boat. There's some new characters here. I will say that the new characters in this act didn't make much of an impression on me. Will is the Mucky Mammoth's handyman / engineer, I suppose. And then there's, I think, Kate, who drives the boat. And they have a dog whose name is escaping me because it isn't Blue.
Starts with a V. Is it just V?
It's something like, Valkyrie. Yes, that's it.
Valkyrie,
yeah.
Yes.
But we are introduced to the Mucky Mammoth, where we're going to be spending a significant amount of time in this act. We're told that there's we're free to use any of the mammoth's amenities, which includes a VCR room, like a videotape room where you can go and watch some videotapes.
Yes,
at various points throughout the act, and everybody settles in a little bit. Conway goes and grabs a beer. And that is significant because we have learned that Conway is a former or current alcoholic, a recovering alcoholic. And we also see him beginning to continue his deterioration. He's now starting to turn more skeletal, more into one of the boys from the distillery. I think his arm is going.
Poor
Yeah,
Conway.
that continues to extremely creepy.
It's very creepy. So this is where we get our first choice. We start floating down the river, and we have a choice between staying on the boat or going to the gas station. So did anybody stay on the boat for this? Because I went to the gas station.
I stayed on the boat.
Gas station.
Yes, me too. So Shane, can you talk about the boat or the staying on the boat portion here?
So I picked pretty much every time as we get the choice to either stay on the boat or get off the boat. I mainly just chose to stay on the boat because, I kind of felt like we got a delivery to make. Let's not go too crazy exploring this underground river. And so when you pick in this first scene to stay on the boat, you have what's the kid's name? Ezra.
Yes, Ezra.
I still don't get Ezra that much, but Ezra, weird child that he is just sort of exploring around on the boat, and you kind of are introduced further to the other characters, the new characters on the boat, who, like I've said, didn't make a huge impression. There's Kate, who is on there, and I think she is the captain, and she's explaining to Ezra how they navigate on the Echo. And so the interesting thing about the Echo is that everything is shifting and changing all the time. So they have, every time they navigate the Echo, they're recopying their maps. And so they have an enormous pile of these different maps that they've made as they've made the route with their ferry, which they're doing, it seems like, all the time. They're kind of passing different landmarks and finding that, maybe the order that we pass these different landmarks has changed. Our compasses don't work down here. So, we have to go by landmarks, and we can't even trust those. And so this is, I think, again, kind of the idea of memory and kind of the unreliability of it coming up. Ezra gets to pick one, basically is offered to choose one of the maps to take. And, you're basically offered some of the old maps as she starts drawing a new, fresh map. I think that's about all that happens in that scene. As everyone gets back on the boat, then we start having a scene with Shannon getting ready to stick around and choose to start dealing with tapes, which I think are another metaphor for memory.
Yeah. I'm interested to hear about the tapes because I didn't really get to do anything with the VHS tapes. The gas station was a fun scene. I'm not so sure about what it says. I mean, this is their first stop on their trip. They stop at a gas station that obviously, they stop there all the time, but it's in a different place every time they go there. And Junebug and Johnny get off and sort of go into the gas station and strike up a conversation with the clerk there. And she's a pretty interesting character. She just sort of, I don't know. She struck me as one of the like normal people living in a surreal world. Just something about her was like kind of funny in that way. But she offers to sell you some crystals, which I bought the crystal because, of course.
And the crystal ends up being, it's actually a plastic bag.
Oh, right.
The crystal is like a weird malformed plastic bag that she's selling as a crystal. And I was like, I love the hustle.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Let's see what else happened while we were in the gas station.
It's existential crisis about Junebug and Johnny's relationship, and if they should have a third, which sounds a lot dirtier than it actually is. It's much sweeter than that. They're like, do we want to? Can we put the dog in our sidecar? Maybe we should do something with Ezra. Like Johnny's clearly thinking about like adding a third person.
Johnny wants
animal
kids.
or pet.
They're robots.
Johnny wants a baby, and Junebug is uncertain, and they keep going in and talking to the gas station attendant instead of dealing with their relationship problem. But at the end, you can choose to have them deal with it, and it's sweet.
Yeah, I loved the guy that wanders in who's looking for somebody he was supposed to meet there from a dating website. That guy was super sweet.
Yeah, he wants help editing his online profile.
There's nothing. I mean, some people might feel differently, but I think there is nothing sweeter in the world than an elderly person trying to put together a dating profile.
Didn't you used to help people at the Apple Store?
I did. I was actually just about to mention one of the most memorable things that I ever did there was this older lady. She was the absolute image of like an elderly New York semi-retired volunteering person, lady who wears a nice fur coat and goes around town doing stuff because she's got lots of friends but no family. And or at least no family that I noticed. Who knows, actually? I only see the tiny slice of people's lives that you see when they come into an Apple store. But she would come in all the time for classes, and she would come in to ask. The biggest thing that she was doing when I was helping her, and she was coming in at least once a week, was she was asking for help putting a profile up on JDate. If you're not familiar with JDate, it's a Jewish exclusive dating website. And just the saddest but also sweetest moment was that she came in for a class, and she was really upset because she was sure that something wasn't working right, because she had sent a message to this nice Jewish man and he hadn't responded, and she was sure that she just hadn't sent the message right, and she was asking me for help to make sure that she had sent the message right to this man, and of course she had.
Who ghosted her?
Yeah.
Oh no.
And I was just oh, Joan, I'm so sorry, but I think he did get your message. Oh my God.
Well.
Anyway, that's the kind of thing that that goes straight to my heart for whatever reason. And so I loved this character. I know some people would look at him differently or maybe even look at Joan differently, but anyway, it was a moment.
There also was a very nice moment that's like theme of the week, forgetting, where the woman who works behind the counter apparently has a forgettable face that no one remembers.
Right.
And she says that she used to live in a city, a real city, Cleveland, Ohio.
The big city for folks who live in.
And she said that there's like a dignity in being forgotten, that she could walk along the crowd and feel like part of it. Versus Junebug, who, because she's like a robot with punk hair, like never blends in. So it was like, again, I feel like all of these scenes are going to be unnecessary to the plot, but they're just little bits of character. This very much was a Junebug Johnny scene.
Yeah, this is more of an ensemble act than the previous ones. The game has already been playing with the idea that like Conway, who's our clear sort of point of view character for the first couple of acts, by Act 3, it's starting to play with that a lot more. And by Act 4, it's funny, it feels like Conway almost isn't a player character anymore. And I think that
the second he took that drink, exactly. I think he's gone.
Yeah.
Like
and we sort of feel him drifting away through the entire context of this act. I don't think we play as Conway at all in this act. And or maybe we do, but I don't remember doing so. And for the most part, we're playing as Shannon or Junebug and Johnny, maybe a little bit with Ezra.
And if you stay on the boat, you don't see anything of him.
Yeah. Yeah, really. And so it has the whole act has this sort of feeling that he's drifting away, which obviously we'll talk more about towards the end, because it's that is the story of this act is sort of losing Conway. So that's most of the story of the gas station act. I'm not really sure if I have anything grand to say about that portion of the game, but it was full of, I thought, good writing and good character moments. And then we're off on the boat again. And our next big choice is between a scene in which Shannon stays aboard and repairs the VCR, or going to the rum colony. So I think you both can guess which one I did. When a game gives me the opportunity to go to a tiki bar, I up and go to that tiki bar, even though I really wanted to see those VCR tapes.
I had to check in some videotapes.
Oh yeah, we both went for videos. I mean, I was worried I was going to miss a musical performance in the Rome Colony, but like I really wanted to see those tapes. And not only were there tapes, which we'll get to, but I want to give a shout out to the fact that there were little hermit crabs walking around. The cat was there and Blue was there. So you're just hanging out near animals watching all of the tapes. And there are choices for bird tapes and a tape labeled "More Birds."
That rules.
And there's plot stuff in this one.
Yeah, tell me what I missed in this.
You want to get into that, Shane?
Yeah, so if you stay on board, basically what you're choosing is to have Shannon take a look at their VCR. The problem with the VCR was that it would randomly record over things. Kate explains this to Shannon. She says that it could only, I think I might have this a little off, but I think she says that it could only play back tapes that it had recorded, and if you let the tape get all the way through to the end, it would just re-record over it, or it would no, hold on.
When you rewound, it would start recording something else.
That's right.
It would just record whatever was on community airlays if you rewound the tape.
Exactly. And so what she was saying was she would leave all her tapes.
You can never look back.
Yeah, she would leave all her tapes at the end. So, because if she wanted to watch them again, she would have to wind them back herself and
by
play
hand
them. So
with a pencil.
Yeah. So there are a lot of tapes that have where the one channel that they can get, WEVP, has just accidentally been taped over whatever was actually on the tape.
But by the way, I just want to stop for a moment and say that is the best call sign I've ever heard for this context, because you guys know what EVP is, right? Electronic Voice Phenomenon.
Oh, I was like, Executive Vice President.
No, well, yeah.
Guess which one worked in consulting?
Yes, and so EVP is a ghost hunting term for when you record silence on a tape, and then you play it back later and you hear the sound of ghosts, presumably, or whatever, on that tape.
Oh, that's good.
So I love WEVP. Also, I've played we won't be talking about it today, but I've played the next interlude, which takes place at WEVP.
And there's actually a tape of, I mean, if I didn't realize the supernatural thing going on there, but there is a tape of Will when he was younger taking, I think he's doing like some kind of public access thing on WEVP and taking calls about supernatural stories.
Called I Believe You.
Yeah, and of course, I checked the tapes about birds, which
hi Mark.
Hi Mark. No, Rickon. I really love this. I actually screenshot this one. Hang on.
Birds from a Great Distance. I also screenshotted this one.
Yes. Blue-black morning swings across the screen. The birdwatcher tramps through the dewy grass. He stops with a wet grunt and rests the camera on a pile of rocks. Birds from Great Distances, episode 12, appears briefly on screen. He twists the lens by hand, pushing the frame past the trees onto the road, and coming to a halt, zoomed in on a fuzzy, fist-sized artifact resting on the momentary stroke of a telephone wire.
And then I screenshot the end of this because I liked it just much. A couple paragraphs later, it says, as the sky lightens, the black smudge in the center of the frame gradually becomes more prominent, but never in any greater detail. Birds from Great Distances, episode 12.
I don't know what about that is so funny, but that's very good.
It's just that it's the crappiest possible thing you could ever televise.
There are people sitting in chairs reading eulogies and trying to figure out if they maybe know the person. That's also
that's also very, very good.
And one called like an art piece that's just slowly zooming in on a scene, and eventually it just focuses on a fan and stops.
Have you guys ever seen much of or been involved in community television? I feel like that's a really lost cultural artifact that I feel we're really missing in the age of, YouTube and everything else that has replaced it.
Well, our high school friend, Matt Hickey, got me a little bit involved with the cable public access in Houston very, very briefly. I think I went there twice just to check out what was going on. But I have some very vivid memories of some very, very strange things appearing on public access late at night that I will not I will not describe on this podcast because they were weird and disturbing.
That's the best kind of capable public access.
So the tape that I think you're meant to find to advance the story, and the one you'll probably, it may be possible to skip it, but it has the intriguing label.
Question mark, question mark, question mark.
Yes, how can you label a tape with 3 question marks and not have the player click on it? So when you load this tape up, you see Weaver in a dingy room with lockers and desks, and there's a caption that says, "Mail, school, and these magnificent tragic horses. Go underground as deep as you can go. The air is cool and the earth is damp, and when you close your eyes, you're surrounded by the dead. Remember where that is? You'll find your way from there. I think the place you're looking for is there. Some of it will wash away soon, but I think you'll be happy here, even without the mail, school," and then it repeats. Weird? What's going on with Weaver?
Yep. What's going on with Weaver? That is the Weaver tape that you mentioned, because you say like you've seen her show up and give her a message across the TV. That happened in Act 1, but this is the first time she just takes a random tape off the shelf and Weaver is in it looping.
Yeah, Weaver like speaks to us through tapes and through video. I don't really know what to make of it. Maybe we'll figure out more about Weaver as we go. Probably not.
We hear more about Weaver later in this act. I got to hear more about Weaver. Not sure if that's because I watched this section, but this is very mysterious. And she actually goes upstairs to talk about it. And Will and Kate are talking about like, hey, the mammoth used to make music. Can we make the mammoth play music again? And then she asks, Will, do you remember the Public Assets channel? He has no memory of doing the show. And she asks about like, hey, what's with this weird Weaver tape? And they're like, oh yeah, we just tape stuff off the TV.
Oh yeah, failing memories again. They can't remember the tune that the mammoth used to play.
I love that the like visual metaphor of like rewinding a tape, erasing it, because it kind of brings to mind this whole idea that like every time you remember something, you're actually sort of rewriting the memory in your head. That's the way that memory works, that you're never really able to recall the same thing twice. You're always sort of remembering a memory.
The most pristine memory is the ones you never access.
Yeah. And I think that's really sort of interesting. And in some ways I was kind of really wanted to do this scene because the whole idea of there being like a bunch of videotapes in the belly of this ship seemed really intriguing to me. But, the tiki bar beckoned, so I had to go that way. This was probably the toughest choice I made in the game because like this was like the two sides of my personality. Go fix old tech or go to a tiki bar. Reagan can't decide. But
oh, poor boy.
Poor Reagan.
Yeah, but I did go to the Rum Colony, and by the way, good name for a tiki bar. I think it speaks to the problematic nature of tiki in and of itself, and the problematic past of rum as a beverage. But also, it was a cool thing to see in this buried river, this little dark, poorly lit dim beach. With a bunch of little tables and umbrellas, and there's a bar here. And so Junebug and Johnny are there to see a friend of theirs, Cyrano, who plays lap steel guitar. And there is another musical performance here. It's not as stunning as Junebug's performance. It's just a nice piece of music played mostly in the background. But you kind of explore the bar. I think the most important thing that can happen here is you have a conversation on the beach with Conway. Conway's sitting there drinking a tiki drink and kind of seeming depressed or confused. And basically, I don't have any like screenshots of this conversation or specific lines to call out, but basically Conway seems to feel sort of like adrift, lost in his path. He knew what he was doing until the end of delivering this whatever it is to 5 Dogwood Drive, and now he's got this new thing ahead of him with the Hard Times Liquor people, but he just seems sort of lost. Like he doesn't belong here anymore. He doesn't know why he's on this journey anymore. It's kind of a sad moment and sad state to see Conway in. And then you go away from Conway, explore the rest of the area. The funniest and I thought most enjoyable bit for me was going up to the tiki bar. You can have a conversation with the barkeeper, whose name is Patch, and he will list off tiki drinks to you. So he has a very large tiki menu, and you can ask him, "Hey, what's good tonight?" And he will tell you a drink, and you can ask, "What's in that?" This is a June bug, and he'll tell you what's in it. And there's a list.
Reagan furiously scribbles some notes.
Yeah, but actually, unfortunately, none of these were viable tiki drinks. They were all gross in some way or other. So, for example, what's good tonight?
How disappointing.
I know. What's good tonight? Dark sweet tiki? What's that like? And Patch says, chill a tall glass with a little lime juice at the bottom. Then just keep pouring in gold rum till it starts to turn iridescent. Add stale jerky, orange curacao, and yellow food coloring. Some folks like sugar. I always include a toothpick. So it has stale jerky in it. All of the drinks have stale jerky in them. That seems to be this bar's trademark. Some of them are even grosser than that one. And they are, it's a long list of drinks. And you can stand there and until he eventually starts repeating himself. But I enjoyed that and listened to the whole musical performance and went around and talked to other folks. There's a gathering of people from the Bureau at the bar. You remember the Bureau of Reclaimed Spaces?
Yes.
They seem to be celebrating something, but no one seems to know what. And also, they were expecting a delivery of Hard Times liquor, but it didn't make it. Presumably, it's the truckload that we saw destroyed in Act 1. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah. Oh, and that's Miguel, or Manuel, or the person who Conway's replacing, I guess, was the driver.
Oh, yes, that's right. Yeah. So it's all connected.
It's nice that that's all connected.
And so the sort of final, I guess, distressing thing about all of this is at some point you get a flashlight, or maybe you had one to begin with, I forget, and the lights have dimmed around the bar, so you can really only see around the beachy area by flashlight. And you go and look for Conway again when you're getting ready to leave. And he's no longer sitting alone and sipping his tiki drink. He's sitting at a table with like 3 other glowing skeletons, and they are drinking Hard Times whiskey together. End scene, basically.
That's no good.
So, yeah. So, he was feeling lost. Well, maybe he's finding himself with these creepy skeletal figures, I suppose.
Yeah. So next up, you choose between hanging by a phone or hanging with some dogs. Shay, do you want to tell us about the dogs?
So I think I actually picked the phone on this one. Did anyone pick the dogs?
No, but I looked, and apparently the dogs just do absolutely nothing.
I did this one. I did the dogs.
Aww.
Yeah, because dogs are good. But I don't actually remember much of anything that happened in this scene. I think it was a really short scene. I honestly don't remember it.
It was really short on both sides. The phone conversations were a series of like fully voiced clips, and basically people are waiting at a phone to make a call. I think Ezra wanted to call his parents.
Or Julian. He just didn't really know who to call.
Yeah, he wants to call somebody.
Well, there were a lot of phone calls. So, Shay, do you want to get started with the first couple?
Yeah, so the phone calls are introduced. I kind of forget why they decide to stop to make some phone calls, but I think mainly Ezra has someone to call.
And Will wants to check his messages. So
yeah, and so what you're seeing is like there's a line of people wanting to make some calls, and as they answer the phone, you're hearing these different pre-recorded messages that sound like they came in over a phone line. And there's some weird ones, but they're honestly hard to even understand as the person is talking. Like they're coming through very garbled. I think some of them, like one of them is talking about the smell of an old car.
Yeah, I think
just different stuff like that.
I think these are recordings from people who called the hotline that was open.
Oh.
The
I wonder if
for
that
that's
makes
the
sense,
interlude.
though. Huh.
I think the interlude,
Yeah.
like if you called it before this, like, and you left a message, because you could get like a number that was like, tell me why you're not sleeping, or like, tell me the memory you told the snake by pressing these numbers.
Yeah.
And you can leave a recording. So I think those are all voicemails, and that explains why the audio quality is so shitty. But that's what Will is checking these messages. And the cool thing about these messages is like you're making a phone call and then the screen slides over and you see where he's calling. And he's calling to this room that's like empty, but there's an answering machine and a bear in it. There's like a bear in the background. And
was
like
it like
a phone
floor
machine.
floor 4 or whatever?
Yeah, but like there's just one bear, and then he, like, you can keep listening to 23 messages. I listened to like 3 because they're all weird and I didn't care for it.
Huh. You know, I wonder what happened with this. I don't know why, but I don't remember this scene really at all. So I wonder if somehow I ended up accidentally skipping through it or something. Maybe I didn't check my messages. I don't know.
Well, you would have if you hung with the dogs. You wouldn't have done this. But there's a lot
I
of
see.
like,
Okay.
so it's not
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, so like that's what Will does. But like, the Kate calls her patient. She's a doula and is like, here's the mushrooms you should eat, and like, someone else is calling about like someone whose uncle might be dying. Like, they're all people are just dealing with their actual
I definitely
life
remember
stuff.
some extremely at some point an extremely lengthy conversation about the medical qualities of mushrooms. So I think that probably happened somewhere in this scene, but for whatever reason it didn't.
That happened in the mushroom collecting.
Maybe. Yeah.
This one is a really hard one to track.
Yeah.
To be honest, like
It felt like what they were doing was they had all these recordings from their kind of art show or from their hotline, and they were looking for a way to use them. It didn't really feel like it gave you much about the characters. It felt like it was there to kind of set a scene of like, you know, checking in.
Yeah, and what I wanted was like, if Will used to run this like weird I Want to Believe TV show, I kind of wish those had been the recordings. But there is a cool thing. So I think last episode I said that I thought I had lost Carrington forever. And the first time I played, I played 4 when I was really sick. So I was replaying the beginning of 4 today, and I had picked the dog the first time, and this time I chose the phone. At the end of everyone calling, I don't know if this happened for you, Shane, the phone rings and you pick it up.
Yeah.
And it's, for me, it was Carrington talking about like, I need some stuff for my performance. Can you help me figure out how to simulate moonlight in the mines? And I answered the question. So I don't know what happened.
I don't remember that, but part of this is that this is a very dreamy portion of the game. Part of this is I think I played this portion of the game at like 2:00 in the morning. So I myself was in a very dreamy state. The thing that I remember most about this scene that we haven't mentioned is that like partway into it, Conway, who has been like waiting for the phone, decides he wants to go back to the boat to do some more drinking, and he jumps into the water and swims.
Oh, right. He just jumps and swims away.
He just jumps into the water and starts swimming. And that was the part of the scene that made an impression on me. The rest of it, not so much.
That's interesting.
And everyone has options to be like, I'm worried about that man, or like, that man is super alcoholic, or I have no idea why that guy got in the water.
He gonna drown. It's a weird sort of middle scene. The next bit I thought was a little more interesting, although again we have a choice between getting off the boat and something I think fairly interesting, at least sounding, happens, and a scene that happens entirely on the boat that maybe isn't as interesting. I feel like there's a bit of an imbalance with this couple of middle acts. So the next big choice has to do with stopping at the Radovansky Center or staying on the boat to play cards. And at this point, I felt like I hadn't seen enough of Ezra lately, so I chose to stay with Ezra on the boat. I also, at the time, was feeling like, man, maybe I'll get a chance to see those VHS tapes. I did not. Staying on the boat with Ezra meant that Ezra is teaching a card game to Will, Kate, and Clara, so the side characters, essentially. And they are playing a game with really complicated rules. It's a bit of a sort of Calvin Ball sounding version of a card game, which Ezra calls the Remembering game.
Reagan, you were really into The Witcher. You would recognize Gwent, I thought.
Gwent was, in fact, Calvin Ball. That was a boring and not good part of The Witcher. Ladies and gentlemen, if you play The Witcher 3, I highly recommend doing that, but I also highly recommend skipping Gwent. But yeah, there's more talk about mushrooms and conversations about things that are happening off the boat. But again, not a huge impression left on me by this section. I wonder what happened at the Radvansky Center.
Oh man,
so dude, much. This is a great
Radvansky Center ruled. This was my favorite part. Oh, dude.
It was so cool. Okay. You really should go play this section.
Damn it.
Yeah, if you play this, just pick the Radvansky Center. Honestly, like
it felt very much like
this is the one to kind of play twice. I'm really glad to have the different perspectives here, because I mean, I was, by the time I had picked to stay on the boat a couple of times, I was actually feeling kind of, I was getting a little cabin fever. I was like, how many more conversations about the boat can I have? So I'm glad at that point that I was off. And in the Radvansky Center, first off, you get a very different and weird perspective shift. It's a change not only in like the perspective you're seeing things from, but what you're actually you're playing as two people who at a later time are watching the security footage of the main characters. And there's two people named Mimi and Jen who are having a conversation off screen about basically watching back through the tapes of people going through the experiments at the Radvansky Center and kind of looking back and talking about their boss, Daryl, and
how
watching
much he sucks.
and how much Daryl sucks, and they're watching Shannon, and I think it's just Shannon.
Just Shannon.
The rest are kind of waiting by the gate. Yeah, Shannon, who goes to the Radvansky Center where she knows she can make a little quick cash by participating in this study. So at some point in the future, they are reviewing the tapes of her doing so. So she starts off by filling out a questionnaire, and you're controlling Shannon, but everything you're hearing, there's no audio in the tapes. So everything you're hearing is Jen and Mimi talking about what they're seeing. And the text. It's not voiceover. Yeah, well, yeah, that's true. So Mimi actually recognizes the name Marquez and mentions WEVP, and mentions also that it's owned by the Consolidated Power Company. And she talks about, well, I knew somebody who worked there that was weird. And at first you kind of think, oh, is she talking? Maybe she knows Shannon. No, she knew Weaver when she worked at WEVP. And she says that Weaver kind of just stopped showing up to work and had some kind of strange end to her tenure there. Yeah. Do you remember the details on this?
Yeah. So I'll talk about the testing in a minute, but just to follow the Weaver line, Weaver stopped showing up, which apparently was super common because it's community access TV. But what was weird was that after Weaver left, like they had this signal jamming where Weaver would take over the community access feed with just shots of her staring in the camera with like a weird hum in the background and like captions that were really bizarre and in a strange font that she was like, they're not the captions that our graphics department put together. So who knows who's doing that? But like the idea that she kept signal jacking the community access feed for months afterward. And then they were like, well, that kept going until the flood. We were like, and they're like, yeah.
Do go on.
And then she was like, that's why we're here. Ha. And then they just drop it.
It's a bit of a preview, but the next interlude deals heavily with that, with Weaver's signal jacking of WEVP. So interesting.
But what I really liked about the Radvansky Center, which by the way is named after the guy who figured out that when you walk through a door, you forget stuff. That was a recent study at I think that was from 2012, 2011.
That would have been about
a recent study
before they began working on this act.
Yeah. But So the idea is that she's doing memory tests where she is hanging out around a room and then she takes the quiz and then they have her change rooms and then ask her more questions and like they ask her to recall a memory and then read books and then say if lines in the book helped her remember more about her memory. Just like stuff like that.
One of the things about the way that they're doing the experiments that she's going through is, I mean, it's clear that it's a very flawed experiment. And Mimi and what was the other name?
Jen.
Mimi and Jen are commenting on the fact that like the experiment has all these big flaws, and they're trying to kind of
that they fixed later.
Out,
because it's an old tape.
Trying to figure out how to fix the data after they collect it. So, like for example, there's a thing where she's asked to not look up, but what were the fruit that are on the wall behind you? And they're like, oh, in paintings on the wall behind you, and she's like, well, she got 3 of them right. She said like apple, banana, and guava. And they're like, oh, that's a pear. What does a guava look like? Is it kind of? Yeah, it kind of looks like a pear. I guess we'll count that.
Yeah, they're like, oh, but these are bad watercolor paintings because Daryl wanted to paint instead of put photographs on the wall, and so they're ambiguous.
Yeah, so instead of photos, we use Daryl's bad watercolors. So yeah, you can't really tell it's a pear anyway. And then
well, there's also coding. Like she'll say something and they'll code her. They're like immigrant, and they're like, no, we don't say that. Like that's a new word we use for coding. We used precarious before. Like, go. But they'll flip back to like the docks and you'll see Conway on the docks talking to the Hard Times people, or they'll flip to the waiting room and Will is sleeping, but it's kind of like everyone is
different cameras.
Yeah. The different cameras are just like watching the other people in the group. And, but the idea is that eventually maybe after they finish Shannon's, they'll process everybody else's tapes, but, you just play as Shannon's. And it's really, like, it's super interesting because especially in one where Shannon is remembering, you can choose to remember a memory of Weaver, and Shannon is remembering a memory of Weaver while Mimi and Jen are talking about Weaver's tapes. So they do really cool, like, intercut dialogue. I really, really dug this. And of course, it's like basically memory and forgetfulness, the center. Kind of surprised this one isn't required.
Yeah. I'm kind of bummed I miss it now. It sounds really interesting.
We check in with Conway again. Also, Conway is waiting by the dock for Shannon to finish, and at first when you cut to him, he's just sort of waiting around, and they comment on like, well, I guess he's just waiting there. And then when they cut back to that camera again, some of the people from Hard Times have showed up as well, and then I think by the time you cut back,
Ezra runs over and the Hard Times people are gone. So it like almost feels like a blip that those people were there.
There was also a kind of neat moment I forgot earlier talking about the testing, which is some of these are genuine like memory tests for the player. And there's a moment where I thought they used the UI a little kind of interestingly. They're asking Shannon to remember something. But the player would be able to look over Shannon's shoulder and see it. I think it's the same fruit paintings.
Or the bookshelf in the previous room.
The bookshelf, yeah. But they cover it with the dialogue box. So the player who's like, the same dialogue kind of interface that's been appearing throughout the whole scene suddenly appears, and it is the blind that is like making you, that is kind of covering the thing that you're trying to remember, which was kind of... So they force you, the player, to remember what was on the wall as well. So I thought that was kind of neat.
2 more fun things. One is plot related. It turns out that one of the girls dated Charlie, who was Lisette's son who died.
Oh.
She's like, I had a boyfriend in college who died suddenly, and it really messed me up. And then she says his name was Charlie. And earlier in the and then the other fun thing is there's a part where like Shannon is petting a cat and they're like, oh look, like Coconut the cat's here, and then Shannon goes and like does something and feeds the cat, and they're like, I don't remember this part of the experiment, and the girl's like, oh yeah, I write on official university letterhead to feed the cat sometimes when I'm out of town. And they just think it's,
Oh, yeah.
and she thinks it's
has-
part of the experiment.
They're following the instructions from the experiment.
So
I
she
love
feeds
that.
the cat.
It's just tell them to feed the cat.
That's pretty good.
It's great. And the cat leaves with the group, so she might show up on the boat at some point.
So before we move on to the next pair of scenes that we choose from, I thought maybe we could take a second and talk about some of the kinds of stuff that you see along the way in between. Because we didn't really mention that the travel in this is represented in a very similar way to the way we saw the Zero when we were doing our drive in the sort of circular highway that is the Zero. Only here we see a kind of a wireframe of the Mammoth, the boat, traveling along the sort of twists and turns of the Echo River. And as we kind of go between these larger, fully realized scenes, there's these sort of text scenes that happen in between. And they are usually just sort of a little bit of, you notice X or Y along the edge of the river, and you see, something about it or something. But some of them are pretty interesting. I wished I had a screenshot of it, but there was a fairly extensive one about two women who bought houses next to each other. They were, I think, twins or something like that, and then they resented each other, and the houses have fallen into ruin. And I don't remember the details now, but at the time it seemed like a pretty interesting moment. Hey, cool story, bro. Any of you guys have anything you wanted to say about the sort of travel parts?
I liked the gallery that you can pass by that tells you about, like, you can choose what's in the photographs. And it turns out that the gallery was of photographs from the town that got bulldozed for the museum.
Oh, right. That was cool. Yeah.
I like that they were talking about the weather down there. Someone was, as they passed the gallery, I think they're talking about one of the crew of the boat mention, they're pretty foolish to set up that gallery here. People think that you're out of the weather when you're down here, but there's a whole microclimate. And the idea that there's kind of rainstorms and things in this cave is kind of mysterious.
Yeah, it really sort of feels like not only is everything shifting down here, but everything is falling apart. And it has a certain like unsettling feeling to it about it. It's very much like everybody is living on tiny boats with no, where would they go if they needed to suddenly get off of these boats? Everything is shifting, and there's seems to be no clear way in and out. It's kind of scary in a way. Actually, we didn't really talk about it, but the very first scene in the gas station, one of the people in the gas station is a man who kind of tells his story of coming down to the Echo when he first got there. And being adrift and losing his lantern and having no light. The Echo is totally dark if you don't have a lantern. And he nearly died. And his story was about how he had some rotting apples that he was eating. And out of one of the apples came a bug. And it turned out it was a lightning bug. And he was able to save himself by using the light from the lightning bug to find his way home or whatever. And but it's sort of a haunting way to set the scene. There is something kind of scary about the Echo. It's this really unsettling, shifting, kind of scary, dark place full of, decay in a way. But people seem to be living their lives there. So the next big chunk is the pair of scenes where either we go mushroom hunting with Kate, Ezra does, or you can take a nap. Did anybody go for the nap?
I napped.
What happens if you nap?
I don't remember because I fell asleep.
That is a perfect answer. What happens if you go mushroom hunting is actually a really neat scene that kind of you mentioned that they were doing a kind of two bits of two things.
Split pane, yeah.
Yeah, split pane. The scene at the mushroom hunting grove is basically that. Ezra is remembering details from his family life, things about his father, who sounds like he's not a great guy, and other sort of family stuff. Meanwhile, Kate is explaining about mushroom hunting and remembering a time where she was at a hospital and I don't have much to say about it other than that I thought it was a creative use of their dialogue system. You could play through both pieces of dialogue simultaneously, and they had sort of echoes of each other that kind of matched. So at certain points, if you were playing through these two separate sort of dialogue streams, there would be things in one that echoed the other a little bit. But it was just, it was a nice. I think the thing that I remembered most about it was when she explains the rules of mushroom hunting. The second rule is have fun. The first rule is ask Kate before you eat anything.
Yes, very important for all you Phantom Thread fans.
Yes, I see you. Thank you.
Thank you. It's like I got one. But then you head to the Echo River Central Exchange. Or you make some mushroom stew and then you go to the Central Exchange, which is what I did.
So I definitely didn't make the stew. My first priority was, we get to go out into the bat sanctuary. That is exciting. There is a bat sanctuary down here. And I loved
It's where the old man's going to take his person on a date.
Right? I forgot about that. Yeah. Have you guys ever been to a bat sanctuary?
No.
Like a cave? I have. I've been to a couple, actually.
I live in a bat sanctuary.
And they make some commentary in this about how, like, well, you wouldn't think you'd need a bat sanctuary down here because it's all caves, but there's specific things that you need to, that bats need, and this is set up, to be specifically for bats. And there's all these signs that you have to pass by on your way in that are about making sure that you don't bring the white nose syndrome down here. If you haven't heard about white nose, then obviously you aren't up on
kills bats.
On the bat lore. It's been a bad time for bats over the last, I think, decade or so. There's been a plague going around with bats. As we're recording, we're all worried about our white nose syndromes ourselves. And it gives you a lot of warnings about, for example, like, don't touch anything, and don't carry anything in with you, and so on, to help prevent infecting the poor bats with white nose syndrome. But it's also where we see, I think, maybe the most, at least for me, the most striking image in the game, which is the sort of floating memorial to the miners. Down near the bat sanctuary, there is a place where there's just a huge cluster of empty helmets, mining helmets, sort of floating. You'd think they would have floated away, but that's just not how these things work. They're all sort of floating around this sort of set of beams, and there's a plaque there. And I grabbed a screenshot of the plaque because I thought this was some of the best writing in the game. The sign says, I'm not sure if this is the whole sign, it's just what I have screenshotted, but it says, "We claim these helmets in the names of the folks who wore them, and we place them here in their memory, but also as a spit in the greedy green eye of that power company who bought up our old mine and traded our brothers and sisters' safety for a little more yield, but only yielded 28 good men and women dead when the walls collapsed and the tunnels filled with water." It's a really bitter memorial, and I love that. You don't see that. You don't really see that in real memorials, but the sting of it clearly hadn't left whoever was engraving this spit in the eye of that power company. Just a really kind of a haunting thing in the middle of this, and kind of reminds you, like, oh, right, this was a thing that we were dealing with in Act 1 and Act 2, and it's the past, but it's still a fresh wound here in this place.
And the fact that this is their kind of embittered response kind of speaks to the helplessness that the poor in this place feel, in the face of the big companies.
Nothing they could do but they say they claim these helmets. This memorial is also an act of theft, right? Because everything, even the helmets of these 28 dead, belong to the power company, right? I love it. I love this. I love this moment. But I'm not sure I have much to say about it other than that it's like it was a bit of a slap, a reminder that, like, right, there's some really dark stuff here.
Yeah, I mean, well, you get the miners, and then you like immediately see Conway waving at his skeleton buddies and being like, I think I'm getting to be okay with this. And after you've just had this like fierce, passionate slap in the face, like against the man from like no one, from just the sculpture, from just this shrine, to then have Conway giving up feels even worse. It's a really clever juxtaposition. Clever isn't doing it service. It was a very moving juxtaposition.
It's also kind of a reminder that we're losing Conway, little by little, Shannon is losing him to hard times. And this scene really brings that into focus. So we get through the Bat Sanctuary, past the very moving memorial, and into the Echo River Central Exchange, and it's another example of like what happens when corporations neglect the things that they own, the people that, corporations are made up of people, but they very often don't particularly care very much about some of the people that make them up, right? And this exchange was once a flourishing workplace and a center of communications for this place. And as the company has changed, it has tried to automate, and things have sort of decayed. So trying to remember the exact details here, but like it's an exchange in that it's like a telephone exchange. There's a telephone switchboard, and it's been partly automated, but there is one person there still working it, and she's there presumably to like keep things working, but training the AI that's replacing her, or training the machine that's replacing her, right? And that scene was like, obviously it's a little over the top, but it's sort of a great encapsulation of like a company might buy something that for someone, the person that works at a business that a very large company buys, that smaller business that's just been bought is their whole working life, maybe their whole career, maybe their whole world. And a company that is much larger can swallow it up, maybe as a part of in this case, an acquisition that wasn't even related. It just came along with something else. And the power company owned this, didn't care about it, and tried to ignore it, automate it, and otherwise neglect it. And it's ruined some people's lives, and the people who are still sort of hanging on in there essentially have the feeling of being sort of ghosts. The person who's formerly like a telephone operator now doesn't even speak to the people that she's connecting, and she sort of feels like she's being like she's just a ghost that's left behind or something like that. And I thought it was like a really like a good example of another, the game doing a great job of showing a sort of heightened surreal example of the sorts of things that are just capitalism doing what it does and causing harm that is sort of baked into the system. And I thought it was very interesting.
And again, with the Conway juxtaposition, then you realize he's like 3 dudes in a dinghy go by and Conway is gone.
Yeah.
Almost
this is where we
just quietly gone. Mm-hmm. There's no goodbye scene. He's just gone to go work. It's a very distressing way to lose what was once the main player character.
Yeah, it's funny because it feels like in any other game, we would see him again, right? He'd be back in the next scene. He'd be back in the next act. At the time of this recording, I haven't played Act 5 yet. I've been trying to kind of go through this, not playing too far ahead of what we're talking about. But I believe this is really it for Conway. Like, I think it's really like he's just gone. We've lost him to the machine, right?
It feels like
it is very melancholy. It's very interesting. So
you can cheer up with the claw machine game. But yeah, it's, I don't know. That's probably the most interesting thing in this like kind of dreamy pull apart chapter, is that he just drifts off basically.
Yeah. I mean, obviously there's some more things that happen here. There's a really interesting scene that happens at a restaurant, and you can kind of, even though it's not really spoken about, you get the sense that Shannon is kind of hurting, having lost her traveling companion during all of that. There's some really clever and interesting dialogue there, but I think the most important thing that happens at Sam and Ida's, the restaurant, is just the moment at the end of that scene when Shannon wanders downstairs alone to sort of look out at the water, and up drifts the Bed Quilt Ramblers, the band that we've seen come through and play folk music periodically throughout the game, and they're playing "This World Is Not My Home."
This world is not my home. I'm just passing through. My treasures and my hopes are placed beyond the blue. Many friends and kin have gone on before, and I can't feel at home in this world anymore.
And it is so poignant thinking back to Conway's scene on the beach at the rum colony, where he was essentially saying, I don't even know what I'm doing here anymore. This doesn't feel like I'm where I'm supposed to be. And then he's gone, and here are the Bed Quilt Ramblers singing, "This world is not my home. I'm just passing through." It's a travel song, but it's also a song about loss and about feeling, missing people who've kind of gone on before you. Meet people who've gone on to heaven or wherever they go, wherever the strangers take them, right? This was a really poignant moment for me in the game, sort of losing Conway in this quiet, sad way, and then seeing Shannon just sort of staring out at the water and listening to this very moving piece of music. It was a really poignant moment.
And I don't expect to stop until I shake her hand. She's waiting now for me in heaven's open door, and I can feel at home in this world anymore.
So I was doing a little research on this episode, and we've talked about Conway leaving, and I know that at the end, Blue or Homer, or whatever you name the dog, can sit and just kind of not come with everybody at the end.
We're talking about up the stairs?
Yeah.
Oh,
or
I didn't realize that was,
apparently you can also apparently you can maybe take the dog with you, but it felt very like that statue of the dog waiting for the owner forever.
Oh,
in Tokyo.
What is it? Yeah, Hayachi or something like that. I'm probably misremembering.
Also made famous by Futurama.
Very, very sad. That final image of them climbing the stairs, like realizing that they can't bring the truck along any further. It really feels like things are coming to a head at the very end here, because, having to abandon the truck, which has been sort of the core of the, how they've been getting from place to place through this entire 4-act story, they're going to have to literally unpack it and carry the delivery. We still don't know what it is, up this horrible looking spiral staircase to get out of the river. I don't know. It's a really interesting image, and I really can't wait to play Act 5. I've been holding off because I wanted to kind of play through it as we progress through our process of this recording together. But it definitely made me want to immediately boot up Act 5 and sort of see how this whole thing lands.
Yeah. Oh, clarification. I think either way you can't get Blue to go with you, but there is you can get him to go halfway through and he'll eventually stop. But Blue just definitely doesn't keep going.
I think I didn't. That makes the whole thing even sadder, because I think I didn't even kind of realize that when I got to that point. I don't know. Weird.
Yeah, you can get the dog part way out, but the dog will never come with you. And of course, that's what got me, because I care about dogs more than people.
Well, we're all psychopaths in our own weird ways.
Yeah.
Anyway, final thoughts on this act. I think it's a little bit weaker than the last one, but and I thought it was a little bit overlong. We talked about some of those middle scenes that maybe were a bit, they were their own thing. But overall, it has some really, really poignant moments, particularly towards the end, and I can't wait to see where things are going.
For me, each individual piece of this act is really effective, but it has that sort of grab bag quality. Yeah. It's strange to have this be the thing that people waited so long for, and to come back to it and have it be such a like a sampler platter of different kind of. However, like it is really all kind of one theme. Like in a lot of the previous acts, I've been able to say, okay, well, there's this theme and this theme and this theme. In this one, it really feels like the key thing is this is about, in a game that's been about things ending, this is about remembering the past.
There is a lot of imagery of the river Styx.
Oh, yeah.
And I think even one of the island you mushroom pick looks like a painting again from the exhibit, looks like a painting that's like the Isle of Death or the Isle of Dreams. It's like something that's supposed to be like an island in the river Styx. So they keep making references to the underworld and the passage, which makes sense because as you progress down the river Styx, you're supposed to forget your real life. So I feel like they had that image. And they have a lot of that meandering Odyssey quality of going here. It's kind of like a hangout TV show where you're and now I'm going here and I'm going here and you're making progress, but it's getting further and further from the main point. So it's intentional and I think it's well done. It's just not what I expected. And it's a really interesting part 4 because it feels like a part 3.
Yeah, I see what you mean about that. Yeah, I do feel like it doesn't hang together quite as well as some of the other acts, but it's also longer by a non-insignificant amount. I think this is the longest act. 3 might have been close, but this one took me the longest to play. I think this one I did it across 3 sessions, which none of the others was more than sitting down to play twice. And it's also the only one where there's a huge amount of content that I didn't see and would need to go back through a second time to experience. So, it makes a little bit of sense why it took so long for this particular act to come out. It's just got a lot more going on than some of the others. But yeah, we're rolling on towards Act 5. Dear listeners, we're probably not going to be doing Act 5 as our very next episode. We don't want to do a full month straight of Kentucky Route Zero, so we're going to try to mix things up. But we'll be coming back to talk with a similar kind of conversation to this about Act 5 with a little bit of wrap up at some point within the next few episodes. If you have thoughts about Kentucky Route Zero, if you want to share your thoughts about Act 5 and what you think of the whole thing as a whole, now would be a great time to send us that stuff. You can either email us, that's info@theshortgame.net, or you can go to our website, www.theshortgame.net. We have a contact form there. We're on Twitter @_shortgame. Or, of course, you can find me on the internet. I'm Reagan K, @Reagan K, on Twitter. And Shane, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter @8bitshane.
And Laura, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter @LauraJNash.
And of course, I didn't mention the last way that you can get in touch with us is via Discord. All of our patrons on Patreon get access to our Discord where we talk about the games that we're playing as we're playing them. It's where the conversations that happen on this show start. So if you want to talk to us about Kentucky Route Zero there, just go to patreon.com/theshortgame and support us at any level and you'll get an automatic invite to our Discord. Listeners, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of The Short Game, and we'll be back soon with another episode.